Previous popes have spoken out about the environment, but none made it such a priority. Pope Francis is essentially moving doing your part for the environment into the realm of obligation. But will that translate into action? In theory, with 1.2 billion followers, the Pope could tip the balance, ensuring faith trumps all other interests, getting in the way of fighting man-made climate change.
It seems clear to me also that climate change is a problem we can no longer be left to a future generation.
Because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. You can read it in the Bible. Centuries ago, the word of God foretold that there would be an evil that would grip the entire human race. That nation would rise up against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and that a corruption of a supernatural nature would sweep away the last vestige of proof that man was made in the image of God. But from the midst of the sewage of immorality, there would be one system that would ascend, one power that would emerge as the presumptive savior of humanity. And that power that will seize upon the misguided adoration of humanity. That power is Rome. And as you behold the artful advance of the papacy's campaign to have their pontiff crowned as the champion of peace, it begins to become clear that the political rigor mortis that once held Rome as its captive, those bonds of impotence have been broken. Rome is back.
Let's take something like climate change.
Let's. We just got back from Antarctica, and Antarctica is melting, Greenland is melting as fast as they can. Sea levels are rising, yet many people are putting their head in the sand.
If I can change how the country thinks about this as a serious, immediate threat, not some distant, vague thing.
Which is crucial.
If I can encourage and gain commitments from the Chinese, that then allows us to leverage the entire world for the conference that'll be taking place this year in Paris. If I'm able to do all those things now, when I'm done, we're still going to have a heck of a problem. But we will have made enough progress that the next president and the next generation can start building on it, and you start getting some momentum.
However, you have people, for example, Senator Einhoff, who's throwing snowballs, who's saying that the greatest hoax perpetrated on the American public is that we can do anything about climate change or that it's even real.
That's disturbing.
So you have a very sane and rational plan, but we're not acting in a sane and rational way.
Yeah, well, and I'll tell you, climate change is an example of the hardest problems to solve. The hardest thing to do in politics and in government is to make sacrifices now for a long-term payoff. I guarantee you that the Republican Party will have to change its approach to climate change because voters will insist upon it. The challenge on something like climate change is there comes a point of no return. And you do have to make sure that we get at this thing quick enough and with enough force to be able to make a difference.
Why is the resistance so strong?
They're concerned about climate change, but they're even more concerned about gas prices.
Right.
You can't fault somebody for being concerned about paying the bills or being able to fill up your tank to get to your job. There's a lot of money involved. Typically in Congress, the committees of jurisdiction, like the energy committees, are populated by folks from places that pump a lot of oil and pump a lot of gas.
Donald thinks that climate change is a hoax.
All of this with the global warming and a lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax. I mean, it's a money-making industry, okay? It's a hoax.
I think it's real.
I did not.
Science is real.
I do not say that.
And I think it's important that
President Trump believes climate change is a hoax. The concept of global warming was created by and for the Chinese.
Yes or no? Does the president believe that climate change is real and a threat to the United States?
You know what's interesting about all the discussions we had through the last several weeks have been focused on one singular issue.
Shouldn't you be able to tell the American people whether or not the president still believes that climate change is a hoax?
Climate change, does he still believe it's a hoax? Climate change is made up, I guess, by the Chinese. And that all those scientists across the world, well, they must be in on it.
Oh, every world leader, the biggest meeting ever, are here unanimously with the unanimous scientists wanting global government and global taxes to save the earth. It's time to resist the anti-human New World Order. It's time to break the chains.
You know, they were talking about climate change yesterday, and now we're learning that scientists and researchers are looking at how to change the weather on purpose. That's right. Michio Kaku is a physics professor at City College of New York. Professor, lasers, really, to change the weather?
Everyone complains about the weather, but no one ever does anything about it. We physicists are firing trillion-watt lasers into the sky to actually precipitate rain clouds and actually bring down lightning bolts. This is potentially a game changer. When you have water vapor and you have dust particles or ice crystals, you can precipitate rain. By firing trillion-watt lasers, you rip apart the electrons, creating what are called ions, and these ions act like seeds, like dust particles, bringing down rain and even lightning.
This fascinates me in part because, too, I remember reading the stories that China had used this during the Olympics, that the USSR had used this after Chernobyl to create rain clouds. I mean, did those really work then? We have some of these capabilities now?
The CIA used this to bring down monsoons during the Vietnam War, to wash out the Viet Cong. Governments have been playing with this thing.
Alleged to.
Alleged to, right.
Yeah.
Now, we realize that for decades now, these governments have been alleged to have experimented with weather control, but nothing conclusive. This time we're bringing in the laws of physics rather than simply waving our hands and uttering mumbo jumbo.
Some people have grown tired of waiting for Mother Nature to bring relief and have decided to try and take matters into their own hands.
Craig Funky is flying me to the edge of a violent thunderstorm.
You see how nice and crisp the top of that cloud is up there?
Yeah. But the former commercial pilot isn't some adrenaline junkie courting danger. He's a cloud seeder, chasing this menacing storm to squeeze out extra rain for the drought-stricken farmland below. This is Craig's job, firing chemicals into the clouds in a controversial attempt to modify the weather. He's literally a rainmaker.
That dark, thick cloud over there has lots of moisture in it.
That's part of the cloud that we see. It actually looks heavy with rain.
Cloud seeding has been used around the world for decades. So we came to South Texas to find out if cloud seeding can really maximize our most precious resource, or if it's just a romantic notion that doesn't hold water.
If you look at the cloud as a factory, we're inducing a lot of raw material into the factory so that the factory becomes more efficient.
And more productive.
Consequently more productive.
Oh, I see the flare.
Yeah.
It looks like he's painting the sky.
The flares are shooting millions of silver iodide and calcium chloride particles into the cloud, where they collide with drops of water and ice and produce even more moisture. Then, usually within 20 minutes...
So what is this white smoky stuff over here?
That's rain.
And Venezuelan leader Hugo Chavez has once again accused the United States of playing God. But this time it's Haiti's disastrous earthquake that he thinks the U.S. was behind. Spanish newspaper ABC quotes Chavez as saying that the U.S. Navy launched a weapon capable of inducing a powerful earthquake off the shore of Haiti. He adds that this time it was only a drill, and the final target is destroying and taking over Iran. The existence of a tectonic weapon has never been proved, but its use is often suspected by conspiracy theorists. For example, the leader of Georgia's Green Party accused Russia of being behind an earthquake on Georgian territory in 2002.
Controlling the weather is the ultimate superweapon. It's even more powerful than the atomic bomb. So if Eero Saarinen was involved in analyzing and studying the possibility of weather modification, and you put all those factors together, and I think you have a guy that basically conducted a big, giant weather modification experiment with the St. Louis Arch.
Weather as a weapon? There are some who think the idea is not as preposterous as it seems. Especially when considering that even today, many world governments are pouring millions of dollars into research designed to manipulate weather.
I think weather modification has definitely been an ongoing endeavor of governments all over the world for decades. St. Louis Arch appears to be an experiment in weather modification. The HARP device appears to be an experiment in weather modification. Who knows what the Russians or the Chinese are doing? There's some sort of technology out there.
There's been lots of work in the field of weather control, using silver iodide inside of thunderstorms to decrease the size of hail. That goes on in many parts of the world to alleviate that problem. They're always firing rockets into the atmosphere in China to manipulate the weather. But is this a good idea?
You wonder if you could steer a tornado. What would it take? Even a nuclear weapon might just nudge it, if even that.
One challenge with that is your shock wave is going to be hard to focus, perhaps, and it might cause the damage you were hoping to avoid with the tornado. I would be looking at how much can I control or change local pressures in the atmosphere near and around the tornado.
These are forces at work that could wipe out major cities. And we're finding out every day new things that we've never seen before. So maybe the lesson learned here is we shouldn't meddle with forces that we don't really understand, because we may not like the result.
Now, a lot of truth is spoken in jest now. Now watch this right here now. Now, we know that the papacy is going to rule the world. We know what's getting ready to happen. Now, let me show you this video, and we're going to ask you, where do you see the spiritualism in this right here?
He is a gentleman, a holy man.
Stop. He's a gentleman. See the setting up? He's a holy man. That means if he's holy, that means he must be right. And that if he's right, we must follow him. Am I right? See, we know the truth, but the world don't know the truth. Do you understand this right here? And so this is going to deceive practically just about everybody on planet Earth. Do you understand this? And that's why we have a mission to preach the three angels' messages. Now, I've shown this to you several times, but I got to show this to you again. Watch this.
A man with connections. But what will he do when God's lovingly created planet comes under attack?
If we destroy creation, creation will destroy us. It's time to take out the trash.
A pontiff fighting for God's creation.
Come on, Your Holiness.
Tireless. Fearless.
This boat must be stopped. Coal, oil, gas. These are God-given gifts, and they are ours for the taking.
Look at that. The Pope to the rescue. It's like a superhero, right? Oh, he's a superhero. Man, I'm going to follow the Pope, right? He's setting us up for that. Look at this.
Unstoppable.
Forgive me, Father. Nature never forgives. If you slap it, it will always slap you back.
He is an easy man to follow.
It says he's an easy man to follow. You hear that? And the whole world's going to wonder. Hold on. The whole world's going to wonder after the beast.
And the hard man, silence. But in this epic battle against climate crisis, we can't let him fight alone. This summer, one man,
come on, Francis,
will risk it all.
Power of me compels you.
Now, who's that supposed to be? Jesus. Is that spiritualism? Yes. And weren't we told in the spirit of prophecy that Satan will personate Christ? There it is right there. So if Jesus is with the Pope, then, and I believe in Jesus, that means I must follow his agenda. Yes.
When I think about these movies, my mind went back to Isaiah 8:20, to the law and to the testimony. If they speak not according to this law, there's no truth.
There's no light. So, understand this right here. Now it's on television now. You see the devil, you see this so-called Jesus walking with the Pope. That means that that's his right-hand man.
Francis!
Pope Francis in the encyclical.
To change everything, we need everyone. To change everything, we need everyone. To change everything, we need everyone.
To change everything, we need everyone. We're all in this together. Brothers and sisters, do you see how the stage is set? If they can put a video out this is kind of like Satan's way of saying, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, and there's nothing you can do about it. The devil's that arrogant. Do you understand this right here? And the thing about it is, if we're not going to say anything about it.
When my daughter was in the 2nd grade, they wanted her to read Harry Potter. And I said, no, she's not going to be in the reading circle.
Yes. He coming with clouds. That's right. He's not going to touch the earth. So we see how this deception is being, the world is being set up for deception. Do you understand this right here? So what happens is this, when the Bible says the 3 unclean spirits, look what it says right here. They declare that they had the truth. Then it says that great power and signs and wonders were performed among them, and that this was a temporal millennium that they had been expecting so long. Then it says, quote, that the whole world was what? Converted. Now notice this right here. They wouldn't have said the whole world if it wasn't the whole world. So understand this, the whole world was converted and in harmony. Do you understand that the majority of the people that walk the face of this earth are going to receive the mark of the beast? The majority. Of all races, kindred, tongue, and people. And it says, and this little feeble people, who's that talking about? 7-day Adventists, stood out in defiance of the laws of the land and the law of God and claimed to be the only right ones on the earth. Do you understand this right here? I mean, that's going to be a test, because when it happens, the whole world is going to be following the papacy. She's going to sit on top of the nations of this world. Do you understand this right here? Do you understand this? That's why the Pope is becoming all things to all men. And what does the Bible say? The Bible says these shall have one mind and shall give their power and their strength unto the who, somebody? The beast. And when that happens, all nations will combine to enforce a national what? Sunday law. And look what they're talking about, a universal day of rest. Do you see that right there? Do you see that right here? Do you see that right there? And look what one of the old popes said. The union of Christians can only be promoted by promoting the return to the one true church of Christ of those who are separated from it. In other words, if we talk about coming together, you got to come back to mother. Do you understand how real this thing is? And we as 7-day Adventists have been given a message, the only denomination on the face of this globe that has a message to call people out of Babylon. Do you understand this? And that's why at this time we cannot be ashamed of what we believe, because of what's getting ready to go down and come down the pipeline. Are you ready for some more truth? Because understand, this thing is going to come very subtly. And look what they're talking about. Car-free what? In the large cities. You hear that? See, it's going to start very subtly first, and then you're going to have to make a decision. Are you going to receive the mark of the beast, or are you going to receive the seal of the living God? Understand this right here. The mark of the beast will be the enforced worship of Sunday as the day of worship. Do you understand this right here? And we're going to have to stand against it and warn people against it. So therefore, what is going on right now to bring everybody together? I'm going to tell you, this issue of climate change has been a beast. Am I right, somebody? This issue with climate change has been a beast to where, look what they're talking about right now. This is from last year. It says, observe a what kind of Sabbath? An eco-Sabbath. Mercy. Observe an eco-Sabbath. See how the law of attraction is moving right now? It's very subtle. It's not talking about going to church, is it? Is it talking about going to church? It just says for 1 hour, 1 afternoon, or 1 day a week. Don't buy anything. Don't use any machines. Don't switch on anything electric. Don't even answer your phone. And in general, don't use any resources. So this issue about resting it's becoming more of a secular issue for your mind and planet will thank you for it. Have mercy. Do you see this right here? So you see this right here. Because what's going on, let me tell you this right here. I'm going to show you something. Now, what's happening is that things are getting ready to shape up. Now, I got to show you this right here. I got some other stuff. Now, look what came out last week. Pope Francis says that how many countries? How many countries? All countries should promote family-friendly policies. And I have an article where one of those family-friendly policies is keeping the Sabbath. How many countries should promote family-friendly policies? And isn't keeping the Sabbath a family-friendly thing? But it's not talking about the Saturday Sabbath, it's talking about the Sunday Sabbath. It says Pope Francis on Friday urged how many countries? All countries to do it. Brothers and sisters, this is very serious. And I'm telling you this right here, man. And I'm not going to get into all this right here, but when he says that all countries should do it, that tells me that this thing is getting ready to come down. Do you understand this? And look what's going on. Look what this article says. It says here that there has been a failure to protest against the blatant breaking of the what? Sabbath. Now, look what it says right here. The Belfast Marathon is now the second major sporting event to have taken place on Sunday in the last couple of months, the other being the League Cup final, at which, as far as I'm aware, there's been no evangelical what? Protests. It is hard to imagine that such blatant what? Sabbath breaking could have taken place but a few short years ago without the Free Presbyterian Church raising a standard against it in the form of public protest. Yet now such events regularly come and go for the most part, and the church is what? Silent. But look what he says right here. Watch this right here. Public breaking of the fourth commandment is a sin that the church must bear public witness against. You hear that? Talking about breaking Sunday. Failure to do so is for the church to acquiesce in that sin. Other words, he's calling for churches to get more vocal about keeping Sunday and closing everything down on Sundays. And this is how the agitation is going to come for the enforcement of National Sunday observance. Do you hear me, brothers and sisters? Now, let me tell you what's going on right now. Do you know that in order, and all of this is being done in the name of climate change. Look what is going on. This came out Thursday, May 5th. It says the DOJ, which is the Department of Justice, announces a new office to enforce laws around the climate crisis. Did you see that, brothers and sisters? You see how Satan is setting this thing up. Because they're talking about the eco-Sabbath. It's keeping the Sabbath from a secular standpoint. Now, the Department of Justice has now created a new office to enforce laws around the climate crisis. And isn't Sunday being promoted now as a means to stop climate change? So what happens is they don't realize it, but we can see that they're preparing all nations to enforce Sunday observance to stop the climate and come back to God. Seventh-day Adventists, it's time for us to wake up. I know it is scary. So let me scare you some more. Watch this right here. Look what it says here. Look what it says here. This is them talking. And this is on NBC News.
That we are launching the Justice Department's first ever Office of Environmental Justice to oversee and help guide the Justice Department's wide-ranging environmental justice efforts. Like all parts of government, it will get its own acronym, OEJ. And third, the Justice Department is issuing an interim final rule that will restore the use of an important law enforcement tool, supplemental environmental projects, subject to new guidelines and limitations that I will also be issuing.
Didn't Sister White say that the agencies of evil are combining their forces and they're consolidating? Didn't she say that great changes will soon take place? While Seventh-day Adventists are asleep, the devil is moving upon men to create organizations and things like this. So when the Sunday law comes, guess what? We'll be charged with environmental crimes because we're breaking the Sabbath on Sunday. Here it is.
important today. Administrator Regan and I know that the communities most impacted by environmental harm are not isolated in any one part of our country. Environmental crime and injustice touch
He said environmental crime.
communities in all our cities, towns, rural areas, and on tribal lands. Although violations of our environmental laws can happen anywhere, communities of color, indigenous communities, and low-income communities often bear the brunt of the harm caused by environmental crime, pollution, and climate change. They include communities, fence-line communities, where exposure to toxic air pollutants have caused scores of cancer-related deaths. They include communities where students have been exposed to harmful emissions from boilers in their public schools. They include communities where infectious diseases have spread because of inadequate wastewater management. And for far too long, these communities have faced barriers to accessing the justice they deserve. In partnership with EPA, our new OEJ will serve as the central hub for our efforts to advance our comprehensive environmental justice enforcement strategy. In our environmental efforts, we will prioritize the cases that will have the greatest impact on the communities most overburdened by environmental harm. And together with our Civil Rights Division, Office for Access to Justice, Office of Tribal Justice, and United States Attorney's offices, OEJ will prioritize meaningful and constructive engagement with the communities most affected by environmental crime and injustice.
What do you think about that? Do you see how it's all being set up right now? I mean, do you see that? I mean, look at this right here. Look at this right here. This is from the White House itself. I'm not going to read all of this right here. They already had this thing set up last year. Preparatory to what you just heard. It is called the Office of Domestic Climate what? Policy. Do you hear that? The White House Office of Domestic Climate Policy implements the president's domestic climate agenda, coordinating all of the government's approach to tackle the climate crisis, creating good paying, what kind of jobs? Union jobs. And what did Ellen White say about the labor unions? So, brothers and sisters, the labor unions are involved in all this right here. And this was done by the White House. Brothers and sisters, this thing is here. Do you understand this right here? And that's why when you see articles about blatant Sabbath breaking, all this is doing is playing right into the hands of what we are getting ready to talk about. Now, hold on now. We're going to talk about this right here. Hold on one second. Observing an eco-Sabbath, but hold on now. I got to show you this right here. We got to show you this. But guess what? There's a thing called ecocide. What kind of side? Ecocide is the destruction of the environment. I got you, Sister Palmer. Look at this right here. Hold on.
Should this be punished like war crimes? A growing movement of activists, lawyers, and political leaders say yes. They want to make ecocide, or widespread destruction of the environment, an international crime.
What? Ecocide. Didn't Ellen G. White say that they would say that the reason why all these things are happening is because we're not keeping Sunday holy? And they're going to one day correlate the destruction of the planet with the non-keeping of Sunday. So what's happening is that ecocide, I believe that when the Sunday law comes, trust me, it seems disjointed right now, but the devil is going to bring everybody together, and what's going to happen is Sunday breaking, I believe, based on what I'm seeing right here, will be treated as ecocide. Now watch this video. Watch what it says. What you want to say, my sister?
I was just thinking to myself, I heard him, this office is just being set up, but he kept saying crime against this and so on. So I'm saying normally for a law to be set up, it works by precedent, like something had to happen and then, you know, they made a law so that it doesn't happen anymore. But this one it is going the other way around because the crime isn't committed yet. So if the office is there, trust me, they're going to make the things the crime too.
That's right. So what's happening is this thing on ecocide, destroying the environment will be considered an international crime. You see how SunDay worship can come into this now? You see how 7-Day Adventists can be persecuted now? How they could, that's why when they charge you with ecocide, charged with a crime, we'll be called environmental criminals. Hold on one second. Now watch this. Now watch this video. Now we're gonna look at this video. Look what it says right here.
If you put serious damage to nature at the top level on a par with serious damage to people and property, you're saying that it actually is as bad, not just legally, but morally, to seriously damage the environment.
So far, most of environmental law works like this. When harm is done, companies or governments need to make up for the damage they've caused by paying fines or compensation. Ecocide campaigners want a shift from regulation to criminal prosecution.
Look at that, to criminal prosecution. You see this? And they're talking about having an eco-Sabbath. So if we keep the Sabbath to save the environment, if you don't keep SunDay, you're destroying the environment. If you destroy the environment, you are a criminal to be prosecuted. There it is right there. Yeah, terrorists, that's right.
If those, key decision makers have to take into account the fact that their personal freedom could be on the line if the decision that they make or if the project they decide to go forward with has the potential to seriously destroy nature.
Their personal freedom. Hello. We've been going through this with the pandemic, right?
Then that has a way of seriously concentrating the mind.
The concept has a history. In 1972, Olof Palme, then Prime Minister of Sweden, accused the US military of ecocide, of its use of Agent Orange during the Vietnam War. The deployment of the herbicide created extreme environmental destruction and left millions of people disabled. Palme was ahead of his time. But with the climate crisis escalating and worldwide protests demanding quick action, the push to criminalize ecocide is back.
Wow. You hear that? So with this push for climate change, now they talk about ecocide.
In 2019, the small island state of Vanuatu was the first country to raise the issue before the International Criminal Court.
The amendment of the who statute? Rome statute could criminalize acts that amount to ecocide. And one of these things, see, they're not talking about it right now, but the day is coming when the devil's going to say Sabbath breaking.
The Pacific country is suffering from rising sea levels and temperatures, both a result of climate change. Meanwhile, what started as a civil society-led movement of environmental activists around Scottish lawyer Polly Higgins, the cause of the Netherlands-based Stop Ecocide Foundation has lately found resonance at the highest global level. The Pope has endorsed it.
Stop. Hold on.
The Pope has endorsed it.
Stop. The Pope has endorsed what? These laws to enforce laws against ecocide. And who's going to be in control in the last days? The papacy. So if he's endorsed it, now he's going to endorse it when he gets full power and control. The Pope has endorsed it right in the middle of the video. You think they care what 7-Day Adventists think? No. That's why we got to be watchmen, watching the signs of the times. Continue to watch this. Watch this. The Pope has endorsed it.
The European Parliament has discussed it. National parliaments in several countries around the world are in talks about it. And high-profile leaders, including French President Emmanuel Macron, have signaled that they would support criminalizing ecocide at the international level.
Wow. You see that? Here we go. That's right, sister.
So, does this mean we will see the Amazon rainforest taking a lawyer and suing illegal loggers before the ICC? Or are we expecting...
What is the ICC? The International Criminal Court.
expecting a CEO to be taken away in handcuffs anytime soon. Well, not yet.
What? Not yet? What does not yet mean? It's coming.
There has been no agreement over what actions legally constitute ecocide. What kind of magnitude amounts to an international crime? Do humans have to be harmed? Climate change is the collective result of millions of destructive acts that we are all committing. So how grave do these acts have to be in order to make someone a climate criminal? And who could be held legally responsible for ecocide?
I would tell you Seventh-day Adventists.
Determining that, not an easy task for the international team of lawyers who spent the past 6 months working on a definition of ecocide that could be legally robust. This is what they came up with. Ecocide means unlawful or wanton acts committed with knowledge that there is a substantial likelihood of severe and either widespread or long-term damage to the environment being caused by those acts.
Alors moi j'ai beaucoup d'espoir que nous verrons un jour ce crime d'écocide figurer dans le statut de Rome pour la survie de notre planète.
As with genocide or war crimes, the standards for prosecuting someone at the ICC with this definition of ecocide would be very high. But making ecocide a crime independent of human suffering would be a landmark moment in both international criminal law and the fight against climate change.
So if there was a massive environmental destruction, that in and of itself can be a crime.